All right. Good evening. I'd like to call the Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023 Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. Can we all please stand for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I don't have any announcements this evening, and is there anyone here for anything that's not currently posted on our agenda? Seeing as none, I'll move right into our first agenda item, which is a joint meeting with the school committee regarding the vacancy announcement, posting application deadline, and possible votes. So I'll let you guys, have you called your meeting to order as of yet?
Michelle, I'd like to call the Douglas School Committee to order on October 3rd at 7:01 p.m. Roll call vote, please, for those in attendance. Heather Moore, aye.
Come on up.
Hello.
Good evening.
How are we this evening?
We're well, and yourselves?
Excellent. So we have a new vacancy for the school committee.
Yes, sir.
So, and have you had the opportunity to do any posting or anything like that for the vacancy?
We did post, I think, a week and a half ago. We have 2 interested candidates that we know of thus far. We have put it out there at school committee meeting. We'll do it again, another announcement again. But thus far, we have 2 interested candidates that are provided to Christine Farno.
Excellent. Anybody have any questions, Mike?
Is it posted in the town hall?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did we put it up on the website too, do we know?
I don't know what Christine Farno did,
I'll ask Matt when he comes back in
but
the
I
room.
do know that it
He's
has
over there
been
and not
posted.
back.
Matt, did we post it on the website? Don't know.
No.
All right. But we've done sufficient posting, I guess, where they've done it in their meetings, plus we have it down here at Town Hall. So, what we have to do, I guess, is set up the protocol and what we'd be doing, next steps regarding, it would be a second joint meeting between our 2 boards.
Absolutely.
Have
When's this appointment need to be made by?
Yeah.
I would say
Sooner
sooner
the
rather
better.
than later, because
No, obviously, but I didn't know if there was a specific deadline in which it had to be done by.
I would say
No.
by the end of month of October, we'd like to have, because the person that stepped down from the board is the secretary,
Yep.
so problematic, right?
Yeah, if nobody else wants to do it, it would be a big problem. Yeah. Okay, so this just an update or?
Oh, it's an update, and then basically all of us making sure that we can schedule the next meeting, understanding what the rules of engagement are on it, which is just basically the candidates that come in, meet with both committees, vet them out, make a
Yeah,
determination.
so if it's by the end of the month, it would have to be done on the 17th at our next meeting, otherwise it's going to go into November.
All right. I have no issues with it being on the next agenda.
No?
And I think we've gotten copies, if they submitted their applications to Christine, then we would have copies of those down at the clerk's office that we could review so we understand who the candidates are.
Yeah, you could have Lisa get them to us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
works for me.
Works for me.
Anybody else have any questions? Does that work, the 17th work for you folks for the next meeting?
We'll
Absolutely.
make it work.
You'll make it work. I like that attitude. All right, that's all I had.
That's all I have.
All right, so we'll put you guys as we'll make it the first agenda item for the 17th.
Okay.
So, do any of you have any questions for us?
I don't think so. So we're expecting that they'll give a little spiel about themselves at that time?
Yeah.
Right.
Would there be the possibility of additional applicants? Obviously, we have a 2-week opening, right?
Yeah, you can always volunteer if you like. Well, I'm just trying to help you, Russ, that's all.
Just saying.
Just putting it out there.
Many of us serve on more than one board.
Yeah, right, Heather?
We remember many hats.
That's it.
That's all I have.
Yep.
Very good.
So I'd make a motion to adjourn the school committee.
At 7:05? Second.
Seconded by Teresa. Roll call vote, please.
Beth Bergstrom, aye.
Teresa Brooks, aye.
Monique Salvas,
Heather Moore and I. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming in.
Have a wonderful night.
Yeah.
Virtually painless.
Yes.
Okay. So the next agenda item is we have department updates. I'm going to take the Council on Aging first, if that's okay. Which would be COA, which would also be, yeah, that'd be you, Patrice.
Make sure I see this. Put that-
Yeah, and we'll go over that and then circle back. How are you?
Very good. Super excited to be here because our van is in the parking lot. We're doing so many fantastic things down there, so we have nothing but good news. Nothing but great news.
And I understand that you guys are doing something for the veterans now.
We are. So we started last week. We decided veterans are all year long veterans. They're not just veterans once a year. So we started doing a free breakfast every other week. And we use the quilt raffle money from the Sunshine Club. Lisa up at the fire department, her mother makes beautiful quilts. And we've been using that to subsidize our lunch program. And so we're offering the veterans free breakfast. So we had 5 stop by last week. So it's really nice listening to the older gentlemen and the camaraderie and the different branches they were from. And some of them were lifers to Douglas. So it was really nice to have them. So we hope that the group will expand. It's new, so we're hoping to. And I know that Bradshaw's office, his assistant, is going to come out to one of them because she has veterans benefits, just to give them some information if there's things they don't know about. As the Douglas is very good to its veterans, apparently, she said. So, yes. So, very, very excited about that. We have hired 3 drivers. Very excited. We are going through all of the training. The staff is going through the training with the drivers. We decided to overachieve. I'm not going to be in charge of something I don't know. And if I'm not there, in my absence, somebody else has to know. So we have one more class tomorrow for defensive driving, and then we do our CPR, first aid, bloodborne pathogens on the 11th with the fire department. And they'll show us how to clean up spills or, call 911, do some CPR, if somebody comes from dialysis and, has a bleed, that kind of stuff. Anything that may come up on the van, if it's used, for medical stuff. So, super excited to finish all of that. It was a lot. It was a lot of training. I couldn't believe the amount of things that we all learned, that you would just think that you can hop in a van and you can just drive it. It's not that way.
Everything you have to
You have to know how to secure people, and customer service was a really big thing, but at our center, everything's very personalized. Everybody, when you're there, you're family to all of us. So I think the drivers are really exceptional in that way because they're very embracing. So we have Tina Jackson, of course, Sharon Began. She used to work at the post office. She's very familiar with the town, which is great. And a gentleman named William Brennan. So they'll be doing 2 days. Tina will be do 2 days. Sharon's going to do 2 days, and William's going to be exclusive to Fridays. So we kind of doing a little schedule of Monday through Thursday. It's going to be doc's appointments, senior center visits, and then Fridays is going to be exclusive to shopping or senior center. That's what most of them do. They don't go medical 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of gauge it, and we'll tweak it as we have to. We're telling everybody, be patient. This is all new to us. And, it's going to be a little bit to schedule all of that. But we'll get it done. It's going to be a door-to-door service. Unlike the other one, they can actually go to the door and get somebody and bring them into the van, and then bring them right into the senior center. And be more personalized because it's our bus.
Yeah.
And the best part is the rides for now are going to be free. So everybody's really excited about that. I have some grant money left over from last year. We have a business in town who would like to donate to it. She's just waiting for confirmation. And our Sunshine Club was thinking about donating towards rides too. So I think that it's going to be a really positive thing for the town. So I'm really excited about that. We did have a contest to name the van. That was something that the seniors wanted to do. And so I didn't bring the list with me. I should have brought it. There was about 20 names on there, and unanimously, it is going to be the Roadrunner. So Airbrush Shack, who did the murals in our senior center, is going to be doing the lettering. It's supposed to go over maybe this week or Monday. And he scaled it up on on his computer and sent it over. Obviously, we can't use the real Roadrunner because he's trademarked, so he made us something kind of cute. So I did print out some pictures I can pass around of what it's going to potentially look like. I just didn't want to print out 6 copies of all that in color, so. So we showed all the seniors yesterday at the exercise group, today the Sunshine Club, what it was going to look like before we brought it over. It's their van, so we want them to be proud and excited about it. And we have a huge party on Thursday for World Smile Day, so there'll be about 50, 55 seniors at that. So we'll show all of them, and then once it's kind of unanimous, so far it has been, then we will put it up.
It's going to look cool.
Kind of bright and loud, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked nice.
Exciting time for the center.
Oh, it's an amazing time for the center, and it couldn't come at a better time because we are booming like no other center on the planet. Today, one of the ladies told us, seniors hop from center to center. And we had a vendor fair last week. We had anybody who comes out to do anything with seniors, whether it be telephones that do special things, VNA did osteo checks, we had somebody else doing blood pressures, the bank came out, the sheriff's office was there, the fire department, police department. We had about 25 or 26 vendors. And every single solitary vendor at the end of it said, your center is so amazing because every single solitary person that stops said, this is so wonderful, this is so wonderful. One of our ladies today at Bingo said that she has visited several other senior centers and that the consensus is that we have the best senior center in the Blackstone Valley because they do feel like family when they're there. All our food is homemade, we cook it. We do the shopping and we do all the cooking, so they're not getting, Meals on Wheels kind of food. And so I think that that's our claim to fame, the customer service part of it, anyway, for sure, because, everybody's great at what they do. So currently, we have 2,362 seniors living in the town of Douglas. We're going to get another 134 on January 1st, going into the new year. In the next 7 years, we're going to be gaining 1,058. So we're going to just continue to grow and grow and grow. Our space issues now, I'll just let you know what they are now, is our parking lot has 17 parking spaces, and now the post office has theirs dedicated. So we can't park in any of those because they have a sign up. We have 2 bathrooms, 1 stall each. They're unisex, so you can use either one, but there's always a line. And we only have 2 handicap spaces. The main room is now being used for everything because our groups are so big. That little osteo exercise group is now balance and strength. That used to have 6 or 8 women in it, so they used to be in the smaller middle room. Now it's got 20 to 25. So the mat yoga is very big. So the main room's being used for everything, so we've had to tweak the schedule a little bit, so certain days, we'll have something in the afternoon as opposed to it used to be in the morning, because we used to be able to simultaneously do things, and now we can't. On the days that we have a really big party, Thursday is now our only day that we can do something really big, because the Mahjong group is so big, they can't be in the little room anymore, 6 people playing at a table. There's like 16 of them, so they have to be out in the main room also. So it's a really good problem to have. I'm ecstatic about it. But our space is continuing to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So,
The walls are coming in on you.
yes, we have invited, Sutton asked us if we wanted to do a joint venture with them. The bingo group used to be like a half a dozen older people that would come in, and then since COVID, it took a long time to build this group back up. Today, we had 23. That's huge in numbers for something to grow that fast over the summer. We're offering lunch with it and such now. Sutton wanted to come over and do a joint venture, and the whole thing today was, oh my gosh, how are we going to get to the center? Because there's going to be no parking. So our vendor fair was a nightmare. We had people at the picket fence, we had people over at the church, we had people in the parking lot, there was people on Main Street, there was people in the post office parking spots. So parking for a big event is a nightmare. So I've encouraged the Sutton Senior Center Director to have people carpool when they can. And Unibank is sponsoring a free pizza party at that event. So we thought that would be fun to do a joint venture with them and see where that goes. These are our statistics that Jennifer and Jill have prepared. Everybody can have one. The first year is 22 and the second year is 23. And you'll notice under exercise, it looks a lot lower than 22, only because it's from only until September 30th. So we still have 3-4 months to go. So we have 3 balance and strength classes a week, chair yoga, mat yoga, and Zumba. So we do 6 exercises, 6 classes a week. So But the growth for us, because we have a My Senior Center, we don't realize it, we just see a lot of new faces. We welcomed 66 new people in 2022, and thus far, we've welcomed 214 new ones in 9 months. So that's our growth. Everything has pretty much, for us, gone like above, like doubled. And 2022 was a full year for us. And we were pretty busy, but it's just insane now how busy we are. It's amazing. So then I did do Tri-Valley. It says Tri-Valley rides because that's how they grouped. These are the CSM Elder bus rides. They provide us the rides. So that was going to gauge us where people are actually going on the bus that live in Douglas. So that most people are going to medical appointments, grocery shopping. A lot of people are coming to the senior center. It outweighs everything. So, and I know that there's quite a few people that would like to come to the senior center that haven't been able to come to the senior center because they're either on oxygen or they have a wheelchair, and going down those ramps is, if you're older, is very taxing. Now that we have the bus, they'll be able to ride the bus, we have a transport share, the driver will be able to wheel them right in, and they'll be able to come to activities. So I would estimate that there's going to be a lot more people joining the senior center, or the adult social center.
Yeah, your sign-ins has grown significantly.
Oh, it's nonstop down there, all day long, all day long. So it's a good problem to have.
Wow. We need to build them an addition. Might get on that.
I just need a bigger parking lot.
I was going to say, I'm looking for additional reasons to evict the post office, since they're such a miserable tenant. And I just got another one.
I'm not going to object.
So we are utilizing all the space that we have. We're very grateful to have a space, but it is definitely being utilized. And every day, we are coming up with new and innovative ways for the younger seniors, still keeping everybody that was there in their own age group, and then integrating everybody. So that's why we come up with the veterans breakfast. We thought that would be nice, and we didn't know how well received it would be, but we were really excited about it. So it'll be a good resource for them, and it was really good for us. It was good camaraderie.
So, now, did you say it was 1,058 projected new growth over 5 years?
No, it is, in the next 7 years, we will have
7 years.
1,058. So as soon as you turn 60 years old, all you people at this table are young, you will get a newsletter.
Do you remember?
Way past it.
So you must get our newsletter, then. Yeah.
But some of us look it, some of us don't.
The Sunshine Club was named after you, wasn't it?
Hey, I did hear it say something
I
about an
think-
exercise class.
Your report is incredibly encouraging, and I credit you and your team for creating the momentum that is started here. Really, it's a labor of love, and I know we know how hard you and your team work at this, and it's a tremendous service. But I'm just curious, the pickleball group, how have they contributed to your growth in the sense of creating new energies that have just made the program better?
Yes, so the pickleball group, they are so athletic, I couldn't do. I pull up here and they're like, Patricia, you got to come over and play. I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah.
They are the younger group. They are the Mahjong players. They are the hand and foot card game players. They are, most of them in the Sunshine Club. They have brought other people in because they do also, Sunshine Club does events at night. Like they're going to be doing Oktoberfest. They do a chili cook-off. They set the whole senior center up as an indoor yard sale, which is spectacular. They're doing a big Halloween party. So they still have our seniors that are in their group, or anybody who's welcome. And then they are bringing people in from the pickleball group that we didn't even, we didn't know. So, and then reputation gets around. So that's not how they do it in Douglas, or Douglas does this, or you know what I mean? So we're very proud of that. I have a stellar staff. And same as when the bus drivers, during the interview, I said, it doesn't matter what you have going on at your house, I don't care. It doesn't matter how you're feeling, don't care. When you come in, you smile, and everybody here feels warm and welcome. And if you need a minute and you take a pause, back office, take a pause. We all have to do it. Customer service is a tough job. And, but it works for all of us. And we have a really good rapport with all these seniors. We know these seniors so well, which makes it really nice, because when you're doing outreach for somebody, if they have to have a service set up, then they trust you. You know, some people don't want to spend the $30 for a lifeline. But trust me, if you're living alone, you should have that. Let me set it up for you. Let's try it and see if you like it. But you're going into their homes and you're familiar to them. So that's why I love the aspect of having, not that the CSM bus drivers aren't lovely, they're very nice, but having our own staff is carrying on our motto, which is, when you're here, your family. Somebody could be in that van who's confused. Somebody could be in that van that's going to a medical appointment that they're scared of. You know what I mean? Somebody could be in that van, and maybe the van driver is the only person they've seen all week. So all of those things are very important to us. You know, to make sure that they have the most courteous and respectful.
Pleasant time.
Yes.
It's your brand.
It is. Yep, it is.
I like it.
So the bus is going to be a wonderful asset, a little bit more busy for the staff, but we welcome it. And everybody works great down there. I couldn't ask for a better staff. Jennifer's been my left hand because she was hired like 2 months before COVID, so she was thrown right in the ring. Jill is a great addition to the center. The seniors love her. She's very easy breezy. And Katie, our per diem, she pops in and out here and there to cover for us, and or on the big events, and the seniors know her well because she's been there for about, 4 or 5 years now. So it's a really nice brand. So we are hoping to have a dedication to the van. Probably, I'm looking at now, because we have a fuel assistance coming in for the whole day on Thursday, the 9th, maybe November 8th, 10 or 11, maybe noontime. I know the Sunshine Club wants to do a big cake for it, and we figure we're going to draw the name out of a hat to which driver is going to actually drive the bus, because they were all excited about it. So I'm like, well, just pick a name out of a hat, and whoever gets picked, and then we'll travel down from here to the center, and I'm going to invite the newspapers and such, and the cable department, and do a little dedication. Matt's going to bring the sparkling champagne, like the Queen Mum. Non-alcoholic, yeah.
Well, if it was regular, that'd be alcohol.
So we hope to do that, so we invite you to join us on that if you're able to.
Mike will ride the bus.
Yeah.
Just make sure he's got his helmet.
You'll ride the bus, only if the wife isn't driving, or?
No comment? So while we have you up here, Patrice, and I'm just kind of bouncing down, would you be able to discuss the Council on Aging Transportation Donation Account?
Yes, so like I said, we had one set up previously from, 20 years ago. So I don't know there's anything in it, but it's already an account that's set up, from what I understood from Jean. We had a business in town that had approached me, and she's going to her board. I'm sure they're going to be making a good donation to it, and our Sunshine Club would also like to make a donation. Now, that being said, we often have people, if somebody can't afford lunch, we're not going to charge them. It's a donation, right? But you have somebody that will say, here's $20 towards lunch, pay for somebody else. So if somebody would like to say, oh, I rode the bus free all month, can I donate $10? Then they'd be able to do that too. So anybody can donate to it. So I think I'd like to, I know that we can now keep it free because we already have the gas budgeted in the van, and the drivers are already budgeted in. So, and I have grant money that was rolled over from last year. They didn't let us roll the money over before, and now they do. And we got a substantial amount more last year than I did the year before. So we're kind of frugal down there. And I thought we can use it for the transportation purposes. And I talked to Adam Frank, who's in charge of the Executive Office of Elder Affairs, and he was delighted. Anything that you can give a senior that's free, a lot of other senior centers, if you'll notice, are charging for exercise programs. My mother is wealthy, but it's $9 for lunch, $3 to ride the bus, and $5 for each exercise class. Who can afford that? Multiple times a month or even a week. So I think they want you to use the money. The town is very generous with our budget. We have everything that we need. So, and I don't have a cook, we're cooking, because a lot of them are using their grant money to pay for transportation coordinators and dispatchers and other stuff that we just wing.
Oh, it's tough. Like, you have people on a fixed income. Anything that they don't have to spend is
Correct.
definitely helpful to them.
And if anybody's ordered oil lately, you'll, or paid your electricity bill.
Yeah, I just did.
Or went to the grocery store. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
So, Matt, do we have to take any action regarding the donation account at all?
It's already established, isn't it, Patrice?
yes, the account is already established. I think what you have to do is set the parameters that it can be used for anything for the bus, whether it be gas, maintenance.
The donor states the donative purpose when they convey the donation.
Right.
So we can suggest language,
Okay.
but right now, there's no donation to accept
Right.
before you tonight, so you don't
Right.
really need to take a vote. But
Okay.
it's up to the people giving you the money to say what you just said.
Okay. So I'll make sure that when they donate, they write a letter expressing that, what they'd like the donation to go to? Okay.
Should be a pointed donation at that point, right?
This would be a what?
Pointed donation, saying it's for this purpose.
Yeah, that's how donation accounts work in
Yeah.
Massachusetts.
The only concern was that create a lot of bookkeeping.
No, it's,
You're asking somebody who really doesn't care.
I would, I,
It's a service that the government is providing people, and we will account for it if we need to.
Okay.
I don't know that it would be any different than my gift account. You know, I still have to do a voucher, I still have to have board members sign it, and then I still have to put it through Jean. And you know, nothing gets by her.
This is, stop getting your track.
You walked in the perfect time, Gene. She heard Gene, she stopped in her tracks.
That was a compliment. Okay. Yes.
She was speaking solely by herself, Gene.
Yeah, no, no. No, it was a compliment.
And I can
So-
attest, no one said found money at all throughout the course of this meeting so far.
Nope.
So
No
far.
kickbacks, no found money, no nothing.
All right, well, thank you very much, Patrice.
Thank you.
And keep up the good work.
Thanks.
Thank you. Hopefully, everybody will be able to make it on the 8th.
Do you know the time?
I would say probably 11 o'clock here, and then, or you can meet at the senior center, but if you want to ride down in the bus, I would say 11 o'clock here, and we'll...
Mike and
down
Ross
to
are
the center.
very active members of the senior center.
You what?
I said Mike and Ross both very active members of the senior center.
Don't be jealous that you can't legally attend.
We don't card anybody at the door.
Yeah, if they look old enough, you let them in.
Oh, jeez. Done with you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Patrice. Mr. Snook,
Hello. How are y'all doing?
good.
Good.
How did you get a copy of my EKG?
That is not an EKG. That is the rise of digital media.
That sounds like a book.
An ebook. So I'm Justin, the library director, for those of you who I haven't met before. And I was just asked to come present what's going on at the library without a whole lot of direction. So what's going on at the library? This year's been pretty exciting in terms of Boy Scout projects. We're have an outdoor lounge under construction out front, so pretty soon we're going to have outdoor tables, Adirondack chairs in front of the library for people downtown to make use of, and some large trash receptacles so that people can eat their pizza, discard their boxes. We also have a new story walk on the Southern New England Trunk Line Trail. It's a 14-station wooden story walk that you can walk along and read a story. We're hoping to do some art installations and some other things as well. But so far, we've got Pete the Cat is out right now, and it'll be Does the Duck Ever Blink very soon.
They
But
do. I was answering the question. Ducks, they do blink.
you'll have to take the walk.
Oh.
But I just, like on an average day, what goes on in the building? I know it's kind of, obscure from looking from the outside in. We get about 75.5 people visiting the library per day. Don't ask about the half. We loan 229 books, 5 CDs, 8 magazines, 50 DVDs, and 6 miscellaneous items to Douglas residents every day we are open. An additional 56 items go out in delivery to non-residents or are checked out to non-residents over our desk. Douglas residents borrow 178 electronic titles from Libby every day. Non-residents borrow 114. On a typical day, 15 patrons will either check out our laptops or use the Wi-Fi for internet, which doesn't sound a whole lot until you account for the fact that about half of them need help. Finding their Google passwords, doing job training, a lot of the ethics courses, people come in needing to take the ethics course and we have to guide them through the process. And for some of them, they're not familiar with computers. It's fun. And we have about 2 programs at the library per day with an attendance of about 8. I don't know if Patrice is still here, but for the record, she's why we can't have adult programming at the library. Any programming budget you would give to the library, you should really just give to her. And she should totally have all of that building. That would be awesome. The most common question I get is, are books becoming obsolete? The answer is no. If you look at this graph here, that is all the circulations of books and e-books and e-audiobooks since I became the director in 2015. Books are holding steady. There was a dip during the pandemic, but they've bounced back and they're on a growth curve that is accelerating. Every month so far this year, for print physical media has either been a record setter or a runner-up. So our circulation is increasing. Digital loans are increasing faster. A lot of people thought that with the rise of ebooks, books would kind of peter out and we would be able to replace one service with another. That's not happening. We're reaching more readers, more material is being consumed, and we're at a point now where we kind of have 2 parallel services we have to sustain because our book readers are not slowing down and our digital readers are speeding up. So things are looking good at the library in terms of metrics, in terms of numbers, as long as we only compare to our past selves. And so now I want to turn the page and get sad for a minute. Because I did do a comparison of our library to our peers. And this was eye-opening, because there's 23 libraries in Massachusetts that serve populations between 8,000 and 10,000, which we're sandwiched right in the middle of. So I'm considering those our peers in population regards. We're 5th from the bottom in our share of municipal funding at 8.1% of the municipal budget. The average library gets 1.35. We're 6th from the bottom in terms of library spending per capita. Douglas spends $29 per resident on library services. The average town in this population group spends $44.67. We're 3rd from the bottom in collection size at a mere 20,752 volumes. The average collection size is 39,350, and we are at capacity with our collection. It has no room for growth. This summer, we've spent a lot of time shifting things, moving things to the attic and the basement, finding nooks and crannies to cram things, but you can only get so much out of the space, and it's certainly not a compliant collection. I mean, if we had to make these collections ADA compliant or they would be reachable, we would have to cut the number of books we own in half. So there's not room for growth book-wise. We're 5th from the bottom in terms of size at 4,200 square feet. Average is 25,388. There are the 4 libraries that are smaller than us. One is 1 room in a town hall, which has been abandoned in Dighton. One is Freetown, which is in the process of trying to renovate, but they have a teeny tiny building that they keep kind of because it's a cute building, not because it's a good library. And their operational budget is less than, any one of our full-time employees' salaries. So, I mean, these are the peers at the bottom. There's peers at the top, but, when it gets smaller than Douglas in terms of library size, there's not much there. So, if we had, funding that was comparable to our peers, if we were funded at $44.67 per person, our budget would be $408,000. 865, 408,865. Our actual budget is 298,008. We're over $100,000 a year below average when it comes to library funding. I'm not blaming anyone for this other than myself and, the library people, because we have been very careful in censoring our requests. We have always been afraid to rock the boat. I became the director in 2015 when we were fresh on the heels of a lot of failed overrides. And so we've always been super fiscally conservative. So we kind of put ourselves in this hole. And now we're $100,000 below average in funding for our peers. and we have a facility that is 6 times smaller than the average library building enjoyed by residents in communities of similar size. So, just as a thought experiment, if we were to shoot for average, what could I do with $100,000? I would be grateful for any of these budget increases, but for $34,000, I could be open every weeknight until 8 p.m. Normalize our morning hours, so we open at the same time every day. This would be the equivalent of 12 extra hours of service to the community, and we could do it with a full-time archivist who is willing to take on the role, 2 part-time library assistants, and an increase in page hours. For $5,000, I could beef up the electricity, office supplies, and custodial supplies budgets to make up for that increase. For we could add a $25,000 annual repair and maintenance budget, which we could use to actually fix windows, repoint bricks, replace non-working fixtures, buy shades, wash the bricks, do things to keep the building in an attractive condition instead of let it stack up and stack up and stack up until we're ready to pay for it with a big grant disbursement. And as far as circulation goes, I could spend $20,000 right now and not decrease the average wait time of people waiting for ebooks below a month. Like if I were to buy everything that everyone's been waiting over a month for, it would be around a $30,000 bill. I'm not asking for that, but a $30,000 increase to budget year by year would let us address this need and kind of help, deal with the fact that we need 2 circulation budgets now instead of 1. And, finally, increasing other supplies, we could actually have state-of-the-art technology as information technology professionals instead of second-hand laptops running Ubuntu. That would be kind of nice. So, that's what average funding could do for us. But is there any questions about that? Or, this seems to be what other department heads were doing in their presentations, so I kind of jumped on ship.
So this, the 34, the 5, the 25, the 30, the 30, the 6, if we total those up, that gets you to the 408, 865,
Slightly below it.
slightly below.
So we could do all that. Our budget would still be below the average. That said, we're performing extremely well for our budget. It's just since the budget is anemic, performance is also anemic. Circs per capita, which is something I thought we were outperforming our peers in, turns out we're 6th from the bottom. But we can't do much better when, our collection size is 3rd from the bottom, and our building size is 5th from the bottom, and our budget is 5th from the bottom.
Plus, you're only open twice outside of working hours during the week, right? That's got to
Yep.
impact it.
Increasing hours has been a huge desire of the trustees for a long time. And Matt said last year that this year might be the year to ask for things if we want things, because there might be, a little bit of room, so.
That's what the clouded crystal ball said last year.
So if that is true, then we would appreciate anything you can throw at us. The last thing I want to talk about is the building. Our building funds, we've been fundraising, are up to $212,250.58. And the big news is the trustees commissioned this building program. It's not done yet. This is probably the penultimate draft, and we'll have a final draft soon. But this document has been prepared for us by Mary Brainy, who is a library consultant. And we worked with her over the summer. We had 200 survey responses. We had a lot of focus groups. Thank you, and thank you for attending one of them. You were in a focus group by yourself. That was interesting. But Mary and I spent the summer paring this thing down as much as we could. Basically what it is it's a short description of the town history and a summary of the data, the building conditions, and then an assessment of what the community would need to have adequate library services, like what kind of building we would need. So it breaks out the space, like what we would need for different areas, designations like, main entrance, staff service points, public services workrooms, that kinds of things, flexible collection and comfortable seating space. This will all be available for your perusal as soon as it's done. But the short gist of it is that it describes a facility that's 13,605 square feet, which is 3.2 times bigger than the library we currently occupy, which immediately made our trustees' heads roll and our patrons' eyes go wide and our staff is just gobsmacked. It's like, how could we be this small and not realize it? Because, we look at this and, it goes back to that we're so used to self-censoring and thinking in terms of the minimum and what we can do with the minimum that, people look at this and they feel like it's unrealistic. They feel like it's too much. It would still be less than average. This would be a less than average library. If we wanted to make an average library, we would have to take this 13,000 square foot facility and add 2 more current Simon Fairfield public libraries to it. So when we say we're asking for average, we literally are asking for average. If we had a $100,000 budget stimulus this year, that would get us up to average. If we built a 13,000 square foot facility, that would get us up to almost average, not quite.
What is the size of the lot that you're on now?
I don't know off the top of my head.
That would be critical to know for a 13,000 square foot building.
That
Figure
is-
how. So are you talking about adding on to the building that you have, or totally get rid of it and looking for another piece of property?
This program by design is independent of our current facility. It designs, in theory, the amount of square feet you would need for each kind of space. And if the trustees apply for a grant, then it's a grant eligible. So like in March 2024, there's an opportunity to apply for an MBLC construction grant, which we can talk about in a sec. But, I'm sorry, I got lost.
Yeah, what I was asking is if you're thinking about increasing the building 3 times the size of what it is, or 3.2 times the size of what it is,
The one
does it fit
saving
in the
grace-
footprint that you have, or would it require another location?
In order to apply for a grant, we have to consider a second location, or even a third, because they don't care, the MBLC doesn't care where your library is, what it looks like. They want it to serve the needs of the community. So if we were, well, let's talk about the grant now. If we were to apply for this grant in 2024, we would need $150,000 of funding approved at Springtown meeting, which they would match $100,000 of for the planning and design process, which would take between a year and 2 years. And then we would have a building, when they're done, it would have to meet their level of design standards. And this theoretically could be it, because this is a grant eligible packet. If we went our own way without the grant, we could conceivably take it and hack it apart even more if we wanted to. But the building consultant is not willing to hack it apart anymore for these purposes, because she's like, any more hacking, any more taking away seats, and you're not doing it justice. You can't ask for people's input and collect data and then just throw it out because you don't like it. It's got to be there. So if the community needs this, the community needs this, even if it's not what is our preferred thing to do. That's the way the MBLC looks at it.
So can I ask a quick question on that? So if we put the 150,000 in, they matched 100,000, go through the whole design process, is there a secondary grant from MBLC that would cover some of the construction costs?
45%.
45%.
Yep. For our community, it would be 45. It ranges between 45 and 55, and our community is kind of on the affluent end of the EQVs, so the aid isn't as much, but 45. If we get to that phase. But so the MBLC doesn't care if the building is here or elsewhere. For the sake of this building program, for second site considerations, Mary mentions the old grammar school and the VFW building across from the town common. But in reality, nobody wants to see the library move. The trustees don't, the staff don't, the patrons don't, any of y'all. I mean, it's kind of a downtown anchor. The saving grace of the building is that there's room to expand up. We have an attic space which is currently not used, finishable perhaps, with a little bit of architectural creativity. But again, that's putting the cart before the horse, because we would need an architect, we would need building conditions assessments, we would need a lot of things. So We've pared this down to the building program, and the trustees are meeting next Tuesday to make a final decision on whether to apply for the grant or not, and to whether approve of this building program or kind of boo-boo it as being too big, too expensive, and too much.
Apply for the grant that includes the $150,000 match at Springtown meeting?
We would have to get that approved at Springtown meeting. We would have to get $150,000. That would be, the application acceptance would be contingent on it. We would have to, on top of this, do a building conditions assessment. We would have to get the $150,000 approved at the town meeting. We would have to do a little bit more work on second site consideration because we honestly have not done a lot of work in second site consideration because no one has an appetite for moving the library. And then if funding was approved, we would go through the process, the design would be finalized, and MBLC would match 45% of construction costs. It would have to go to a vote in spring of 2027. It's kind of, they announced this 1 year before it came, before the application was due. Like, they announced it this past February. The application is due this upcoming March. And this is the first time they have run the grant program like this. Before, there were design grants that you could apply for, and then there were project grants you could apply for. And that led to the most recent wait period for library construction was over 10 years. So now they're condensing it all into one and saying that there's going to be another grant round in 2029. So I guess the questions I would have, like if I can ask the board questions, is a 13,605 square foot library too big for our community of 9,000, or is it not? Because the trustees are split. It's a hard call. Is now a good time to apply for this grant or to pursue anything with other projects in the pipeline? Or would it be better to wait and apply in 2029? And if we don't apply for a grant, what would y'all recommend as next steps? Do we have to answer all these questions tonight? No. But this is just what I wanted to bring to the table and have y'all thinking about.
I'll give you some input back.
Please.
You just stated that the board is split. They don't know which way to go. And I think that historically, that's where you ran into a problem before. I think the town's already spent $90,000 on a set of plans that got thrown away because nobody could agree on getting it done and pushing it forward to the finish line. Now you're back at the same point. And I asked you a very basic question, what's the size of your lot? Well, 13. I don't know what the size of the lot is. So it sounds like you still have some planning to go. You have to be comfortable with your thoughts before you try to ask everybody else to jump on board with it, because my questions are very simple. You're going to get hit with a lot harder questions when you're standing in front of a group of people at the town meeting trying to get $150,000 for a set of plans.
And we'll be prepared by that point if that's the route we end up doing. I just don't know the number off the top of my head.
No, that's fair.
Yep.
And I think you addressed it a little bit, right? The footprint's the footprint. The opportunity might be heading upward.
There's an opportunity to go up, and, like, we built our lot with the intention that if we were ever to put an elevator on the back and then square off the sides, that's kind of where it would end up. I mean, it's not a paved lot. It would need more work. But would it meet this criteria? Probably not. But, I mean, if we submit this and we get a grant, and when we start working with an architect, then there's push and pull, there's give and take, there's a lot of planning and design to go through. And I don't think that they would try to cram something down our throats that's entirely unpalatable. But it would be bigger than our board's comfort.
So going up, Tim, you'd have a couple challenges. One, you wouldn't gain a ton of square footage. I've been in that building a few different times. And you're also limited to the 35 feet that's currently in our zoning code for the height. So it's not like you're going to make a 6-story building out of it to get a triple-sized building. So you'll gain a little bit of space going up, but not a lot.
Yep.
It sounds like what they mostly hung up on is there's people that just want to hold on to the space they're in.
I just think that they need to digest it and come up with a real good plan and and move forward with it. They have to be more decisive in it. We can't make the decision for them. I don't know what their needs are, so it goes a little past what the trustees may want, is what do you need? You're the director, so you know what your audience is for the patrons that come in, so you have a better grasp on your needs than somebody that meets once a month.
But they are my bosses.
I'm not saying that.
So you have to proceed with caution.
I do.
I'm just openly thinking, that's all. Nothing else.
I got so you're in that building pretty much every day. Do you think that we need a bigger building? Like, is it a necessity or is it more of just a want?
We definitely need a bigger building. I mean, I think the fact that we're 6.4 times smaller than the average library that serves a population between 8,000 and 10,000 people kind of speaks to that need in and of itself. But I believe that the reason our print circulation is not growing more than it is because we have no room to grow our collection. I mean, we're kind of stuck with the number of volumes we have. And if we do get more volumes, we have to take, volumes that we have and put them in inaccessible places, like the attic, which means that they're likely to come up on holds lists when someone places them on hold, but no one's going to wander into the library and pull it off the shelf. It's, for all practical purposes, a dead book until someone finds it online. That said, I don't have anything that hasn't searched in the last 3 years. So it's not a dead collection, it's very much a living collection without room to expand. And, we rely on the consortium to bring things in, but in an age of instant gratification, people don't want to have to place a hold on a library book and then wait for it to be pulled from somewhere else after it's been returned, and wait 64th in line for 300 copies. They want it now. They want to be able to go to the library and pick up the book, and if they can't, they're likely to just go to Barnes & Noble or Audible or Amazon or, anywhere they can get it.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Justin?
No, I think you similar to the COA, doing an awful lot with the limited resources that you have and the people that you have. I think there's a lot of good momentum there. I'm intrigued by extending the library hours. I think that might be something that I would support.
It would definitely break a programming bottleneck for us too, because we're only open, we only have one program space, and we're only open 2 nights after work. So if Deb is using the downstairs space for children's programming, we can't have adult programming. Our book clubs meet up in collection space whenever we have them, which means people can't access the collections unless they start climbing over people who are doing book clubs. Being able to spread the activities out over multiple evenings instead of just having 2 would also be a huge, huge boon. Anything else?
No. Thank you for the update, Justin.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Pleasure as always.
Okay, so we're on to the Highway Commissioner's review of earth removal project for Peter Michael Business Park, lots 1 and 2, and possible votes.
Mr. Chairman, since they were posted, could you at least for the record state that you're going to pass over a couple items on the agenda to get?
4 and 5.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to pass over item 4, which was an open space request for Select Board letter of support for the 2023 Open Space and Recreation Plan, and I'm also passing over the Chapter 61 policy first read.
Members want to be here when we discuss those topics. They were unable to attend tonight, so they asked the board pass over those items.
Excellent. And I believe you're here to...
Yes, this is the Peter Michael Business Park. You moved it up on the agenda, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, gents. My name is Rob Knapik. I'm an engineer with Allen Engineering and Associates in Hopedale. And as set forth in our letter, this is a request that the selectmen, acting as road commissioners, consent to excavation within 100 feet of a public way. And the reason it comes about is briefly, you may know that there's a recently approved subdivision at a property known as 100 Davis Street. It's called Peter Michael Business Park. It is a cul-de-sac that's been constructed. McIntyre is operating on a couple of the lots. The owner, Second Generation LLC, seeks to lease the first two lots, lots 1 and lot 2, which together comprise about 2 acres, to a company called Bridgewell Mats. They're in the business of leasing mats that are used in the construction industry. And these mats are constructed of heavy timbers that are tied together with cable or chain. They'd be used to support heavy construction equipment that needed to, for example, cross a wetland, or if a crane needed to be situated on unstable ground, the mat would be placed beneath it. Bridgewell's needs are pretty simple. They need about 2 acres of level ground, and so that's what the project entails. It requires an earthwork special permit under your zoning bylaw from the planning board. And the reason it requires an earthwork special permit is because the project, which involves leveling the 2 acres, will export about more than 300 cubic yards in a year, which is not a lot. And as I said, the project involves simply leveling the site. We did apply for that earthwork special permit from the planning board. The planning board held 2 public hearings. The applicant made certain modifications to the plan in response to some of the planning board's concerns, and the applicant requested a number of waivers. The planning board granted the earthwork special permit and granted a waiver of excavation within 100 feet of a public way, which Davis Street or Route 16 is. The planning board agreed with us that because this isn't a sort of a traditional gravel mining operation where you might be concerned about excavation within 100 feet of a public way because of steep slopes or slumping, but really because it creates a level surface at the same grade as Davis Street, that it made sense to grant that waiver. However, in granting that waiver, the planning board requested that the applicant ask you, as road commissioners, consent to that excavation within 100 feet of Davis Street. Finally, as I mentioned, in response to some concerns expressed by the planning board about the visual impact of the project, particularly from Davis Street, the applicant agreed to leave, as you see in green here, a vegetated buffer. So that is intended to kind of mitigate the impact of the project visually from Davis Street. And certain other measures were agreed to as well, including stacking mats in a certain location and maintaining dust control at the site. So the request before you is set forth in my letter is simply that you acknowledge or agree that the waiver is warranted and you consent to that excavation within 100 feet of Davis Street, and that you express that to the planning board.
So we're only concerned with 100 feet off of Davis Street, which would roughly be half of Lot 1?
It'd be quite a, yes, that's a good point. It would be quite a bit of Lot 1. By scale, it would be, 100 feet is about here. And so it would be a pretty substantial part of Lot 1, that's right.
And that portion of Lot 1, from what I've observed, basically just needs to be leveled. There's not a lot of excavation from that part of the lot.
Exactly.
It looks low
Yes.
in the southerlymost corner. Looks like you're gonna need to bring some in
Correct.
and level that particular section
That's right.
with that 100 feet.
What's that dotted rectangle?
So the operation of the mat company is that they stack these mats at a certain location, store them, and when there's a need for them, the user would come in, and the plan is they'd come in with a flatbed truck, the mats would be loaded onto the flatbed truck, and then they'd go off to wherever they're used, and they'd be returned when they're done using them. So as part of the agreement to try to mitigate the sort of visual impact of the project, we agreed that within this dotted region, that's what we call the preferred stacking area. So whenever the mat company has mats to store, that they'd be that they be stacked here to sort of, again, create some sort of a visual buffer.
Visual buffer to what? What are you trying to buffer? What's the visual buffer from? Because you're building a wall with mats from the street, so I would think it would be more of an eyesore than having them stacked somewhere else. I'm just curious.
Concern by the planning board and perhaps some abutters is that the internal operations, there's not a lot going on. And in fact, as I understand it from speaking with the Mac company, their operations are not all day, every day. In fact, this site isn't even expected to be staffed every day. The need for these is kind of intermittent. But nonetheless, the concern was, truck traffic and the equipment, such as it is, a Bobcat that they use to load them. So that's what was agreed to.
Any idea how high they'd be stacking them there?
No more than about 10 feet. The equipment that loads them is a Bobcat, and so the Bobcat only has a certain reach.
So the visual buffer is more the woodlands that they already agreed to leave in place, right?
I'm sorry?
The visual buffer that we're talking about is this green area with all the squiggles on it. That's like, I'm assuming just like regular woods
That's right.
and trees and foliage or whatever.
That's right. So the current tree line goes something like, well, you can see it here. Some of it will be cleared, but rather than clear right up to the right-of-way, the applicant agreed to leave this vegetated strip. There's about 15 feet within the property and another 10 or so within the right-of-way for a total strip of about 25 feet.
Okay.
It's probably also worth noting, and you might sort of intuitively understand this, that this is most likely a sort of a temporary use of the site. More likely than not, after some period of time, who knows, probably a number of years, a sort of more permanent use of the site will be made. In other words, there'll be a design of a building and infrastructure and parking and so forth. But that will come as market demands make that, more feasible. So this isn't likely to be the ultimate or sort of forever use of the property. This is something that they're doing as an interim measure.
Kind of an ad hoc. It's just, it's here, I can store it. When I need it, it's there.
They found this company that needed a flat level surface, and it made sense. They've got the site, they've got other lots. They're really relocating here from Hopedale, the company is.
The planning board had a couple hearings on this?
They did. They opened a public hearing in August. It was reviewed by the town's reviewing engineer. There was modifications made to the plan, and a continued public hearing in September. It was closed, and they issued the decision about, I think, a week or so ago.
Did any abutters weigh in?
A single abutter did appear and express some concerns. We did our best to address those concerns. Those concerns were mainly visual.
So looking at your existing grades to your proposed grades, they're only about 1.5 feet difference, so that you're really not doing anything. So what are we talking about an earth removal permit through this board for?
Yeah, well, again, the threshold for the earth removal permit is pretty low, 300 yards.
It's before you because you are the road commissioners, and the activity will be within 100 feet of your road. So the planning board wanted you to sign off on that.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say the planning board, the bylaw says that there shall be no excavation within 100 feet of a public way. And as I said, the planning board agreed with our rationale for waiving that, but I think their view of it was that you, as a road commissioner, as effectively the board with the control over public ways, should be the ultimate arbiter of that, or should be the board to consent to that. In the same way that a private abutter might consent to excavation within 100 feet of a property line.
And again, within that 100 feet, you really don't have a lot going on as far as removal. You're doing more leveling
That's right.
in that area than you are removing, so.
Yeah, the project really is not much more than creating a level surface that's about the same grade as Davis Street and Legacy Circle, which is constructed to base course. There's also some drainage because the project involves removal of vegetation and a certain amount of grading. We did channel the drainage into a basin at the corner. That again was reviewed by the town's reviewing engineer. There's precautions that were made to ensure that any truck traffic had a stable surface to enter and exit. So there was, even though it's a flat gravel lot, there was some design involved.
Anybody else have any questions? Anybody care to make a motion?
All we're talking about is playing around with the dirt on the site. We're not talking about
Yeah.
any of the placement of anything that's on there.
Who doesn't like playing with dirt, really?
I have no problem with playing with the dirt. I'm not too crazy about the 10-foot wall that's going to be 15 to 20 feet from the public way, because that's the first thing you're going to see when you're coming up the street, but that's me.
Anybody care to make a motion on this?
Well, that's I mean, Mike raises a point there. It looks like,
I don't know if anybody's familiar with these mats, but if you go by the Tatro property, the old Grandeur Tech now, they're on the left side of the driveway all the way along the tree line, already stacked up.
is there any way you can turn that square or that dotted rectangle horizontal as opposed to it's vertical?
Well-
It's now?
Perpendicular to the street along the property line.
We could limit the height of it.
Or half and half.
It might be worth noting that more likely than not, as you're driving along, you won't see any but that much of it, which is probably about 50 feet. And the reason is...
I know,
because-
I can see that entire pile of dirt that they've been playing with for the last 6 months through the tree line now. I can see everything they're doing driving up and down that street, so you're not, that 15 feet of maple trees isn't gonna block those at all, and in another couple weeks, they ain't gonna block anything. It's just unattractive. You're creating a new industrial park. You're trying to attract businesses and stuff to it, and this is the first thing you're gonna see coming down. That's just my thought.
But that's temporary until the work's done?
It is. yes.
What's temporary?
The whole use of the site is
The
temporary.
use of the site could be years, he said, so.
Yeah, but those mats won't be there.
No, that's the primary use of this lot, is to store these mats. It's a business that supplies these mats around for stabilization, whether you're on the high tension lines or wherever you need the unsuitable soil and you gotta bring in a crane or a skidder or whatever else, you're gonna put down these giant timber mats to drive across. That's their business, that's what they do.
That doesn't matter. We're here for the 100-foot buffer off of the main road. And I don't see a concern with the earth removal.
With the dirt, it's just a comment, so I don't see any problem at all with changing the grade 1.5 feet, because if the catch basin over here is 460, they're at 459.5, the existing grade is 458 on this end, it's 456 on the other end. I don't have no problem at all with leveling the dirt that they've already leveled the entire lot anyways, that's already done. It's just
That's
the
all.
appearance of these things coming up. It's just a comment. It's not before me, it's not before me, but I'm not just gonna nod my head to it and not even address the visual appearance of that. I'm just surprised that the planning board even went through that process and then have a problem with that. But 10-foot wall is 10-foot wall, so whether it's made out of stone or logs.
There may be times when there isn't any there, if all the mats are out and in use. I can't say. I don't know what the sort of frequency is. All I can tell you is that it wasn't originally designed this way, It's a request that was made.
I get it, you're just doing your job, and I'm just trying to do mine. It's just,
I think if
it's
there's
the
a
first thing you're gonna see coming into town,
After the
it's
fact, you
just
address it then.
unattractive, that's all. What's that?
If there's a concern with the mats and the visual of it, we address it then. We're just,
When?
if there's ever an issue.
I think the time to address it is during the permitting phase, because it's gonna be problematic. It's-
But
it's-
we're permitting is earth removal.
You have 93 Davis Street that the planning board approved to give them the CO and everything else, and the final pavement still isn't put on, and they can't do nothing about it. But it's already done, so you're not gonna be able to address it later. So. It is what it is, so I don't have any problem with the dirt. My comments about the infamous wall.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with
That's
it,
all.
you know, I think it's gonna be, we don't want to pile.
So, Mr. Chairman, how do you handle that problem?
That's a fantastic question, but unfortunately, the wall itself and all those other things in the use isn't in front of us. So there's no action that we can take at this point in time. All we can do is say, yes, we, approve of what they're asking of us, or we say we don't.
Basically already leveled anyways. If you look at the existing grade compared to the proposed grades. Does this have to go back to planning board after it leaves here, or they're all 100% done?
Through the chairman to you, Mr. Fitzpatrick, Matthew Mino, Community Development Director. They've already voted to close public hearing and render a decision. Just part of the waiver was to grant the waiver for the 100 feet within the public right-of-way, but they just subject to review by the Board of Selectmen. That's it. So, but the hearing process.
And the waiver was specifically just for the gravel,
That's correct. Just for the distance from the right-of-way.
for the gravel. Nothing to do with the wall.
Correct.
In the future, if you could ask them to, at least, if we're going to be part of a decision, to include us.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody care to make a motion on this?
I don't.
Nobody wants to make a motion on this?
I can make a motion.
Did the planning board, I know it's not before us, but did the planning board discuss heavily these mats and alternative sites that might work for the applicant?
They only discussed the subject property that was before them.
Unfortunate.
Can we request that the company use the
No, they've already gone through the planning board. Planning board does site plan review, so they've already basically permitted them to do that. So I don't think that we could turn around and stipulate what they do, because that's not what's before us. All that's before us is whether or not we have any problems with them working within 100 feet of the setback from the right-of-way. Well, either that, we're going to be here all night long, so I just have to find the subject, and then we'll, so I'll make a motion to approve the earth removal within 100 feet of the right-of-way at the Peter Michaels Business Park, Lot 1 and 2.
I'll second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the matter? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yep, you too.
Okay, so,
Mr. Chairman, in the interest of this last agenda item, could you send some sort of memo to the planning board to ask them to at least ask us for our input before we're stuck with a decision-making process?
I can do that, and I think we could, Matt, we'd be able to put a policy forth on that, wouldn't we?
No, planning board's different.
No?
No.
So it's just a humble
It would be,
request?
it would be a courtesy.
Okay. I'll send out a memo on it. And Matt, if you could convey that into them as well.
I will.
So,
It's unfortunate. You got a new industrial park coming in, that's the first thing you're gonna see. It's gonna look like a building surplus yard. But whatever, it is what it is.
All right, moving on. We have to designate a select board member as representative for the firefighter union and police union negotiations and possible votes. Is any select board member interested in filling said position?
Before anybody volunteers, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
You may.
the commitment being asked of a member of the board is typically daytime, so during regular business hours. A typical negotiating session can go anywhere from half an hour to more like 3 hours, especially as we get closer to being done and we're going through language that's been drafted. In about 5 or 6 meetings. So you're really looking at about somewhere between 10 and 15 hours of commitment. And because this is our third iteration with these two unions, and we've worked out a lot of the language, don't foresee a lot of language changes. Most of this conversation is probably going to be about the economics of the contract. It may be shorter than it has been in the past.
I would make myself available if needed.
So I can say I had an interest in it myself, but things are dynamically changing daily at Avaya, and I just don't feel that I could give it the attention that it's looking for during regular business hours. So I'd be looking for another member of the board, if they do have the time during the day, to be willing to step up and be part of these negotiations.
I'm not saying I have the time, I'm just saying I'll make the time.
I don't even have that luxury.
Are we just looking for one, or are we looking for an alternate also, or?
We could do
Well-
one for each, or one for all, or?
You really, an alternate doesn't really work. You have to be
Or maybe
in it
it's not
100%.
Yeah. I mean,
If you're not, then it's not productive for the team of negotiation. And I thought about it before I put my, open my mouth, I guess.
Do you want any time? Do you want one?
Well, again, it's about just making it, I'm just thinking, I'm local, so I can make time for our people. So if we want one or the other, or if we want two to converse.
I think I think it's a good process to be a part of, so I won't over it. And then I would think it's fair to have Mike do both police and fire. So would it be all right if we did one each? Unless Max, you want something, we could do it over, but
Would I be allowed to like just sit in them as like an observer? I don't feel comfortable being the negotiating selectman, not at this point, but if I could be there just to observe how the process works.
We can agree to that in ground rules and then inform you. I don't know why anybody would have any issue with that. Under the act, it's the town administrator that negotiates the contract. I put together a team always with the chief and a member of the select board, because you will ultimately recommend ratification of the contract at town meeting, and it is much better to have you
Have knowledge
engaged
of
from the
it.
beginning and able to talk to your colleagues in executive session when it comes up. And that's why we structure it this way. You're not expected to, write a proposal and present it or anything like that. I mean, you offload that work to me. That's what you hire me to do.
Unless it's Max, then we can make it do it.
Well, yeah, if he wants to.
I don't think I'd be much help writing those proposals. I'd like to see how.
If at least one optimization model using calculus,
and we have counsel in the room as well, right?
No.
No. Like, we always do it that way, under you?
Under me, yes.
All right, so we have Ross who's willing to do one, and Mike that's willing to do the other? Any
that's
preference
what I
as to
mean.
which one?
Doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter to me. You can flip a coin.
How about we do Ross with fire and Mike with police?
Whatever,
Does that work for you?
whatever.
Works for you?
I'm fine with that.
All right, I would make a motion that Ross be our firefighter union discussion liaison, and Mike is our police union liaison in the upcoming union discussions or negotiations.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? So then, Max, did you want to sit on both of these, or just pick one of the two
I
collective
think
bargaining
what
units?
Matt had suggested is during the initial process, then the group
For
makes
ground
that
rules.
decision.
Right, so we do ground rules in the first meeting.
Yeah.
We can put that in there and agree to it. Then if I had to recommend anything, of hearing the opening positions of both sides is a learning experience. And you can skip a couple and come in and see where if we start to get close.
Okay. All right, so motion was made and seconded. Any other discussion on this? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we have a follow-up discussion on the warrant article on the no solicitation bylaw. Has there been changes?
I believe this is still in the same draft as it was the first time it went around. I don't think there's been any changes to it.
I was a fan of that bylaw when it came through the first time.
And it's
I'm not
on,
entirely sure I even know why this is on the agenda. Does anybody remember?
no, no.
Was it because we already spoke to the chief?
Yep. Yep. I thought we were all set on it, and it was just as a, on the warrant, and I just checked the warrant, and it is on there, so.
Anybody have any questions, concerns, or comments on it? No? All right, we'll go right by that. So we have to review and close the November 6, 2023 STM warrant and possible votes. And is there...
Do you want a quick overview as best as I can from my perspective? I would invite Gene to sit at the table to help.
Want to come up, Gene?
Though I think I can do most of the talking since Gene's had a long day. As you know, fall town meeting is when we do some cleanups. We review how the budget is running at this point in the fiscal year, and we ask for, once we have new growth certified, additional resources or transfer of resources that we are not allowed to do as your administration, but town meeting can do in order to pay the bills. So Article 1 are those budget transfers and amendments. One of the other things we do in the fall is sometimes we know we have a project that we have traditionally funded with operating expenditures, but we don't put it into the main budget in May. We wait to see what happens with new growth before we take the next step in that project. In particular, the removal of trees from public rights-of-way. And we've been spending at least $50,000 a year now for several years running. Our partners at National Grid have spent millions, close to $1 million bucks, on the same project. The tree population in Douglas was devastated by winter moths and gypsy moths and drought, and the trees continue to die. They continue to lean over roadways, and we are only responsible for town trees on town property, and that's enough, frankly. A couple of years back, John, as tree warden, was telling you they had several hundreds, if not a couple thousand trees that were identified that needed to be removed. And we've been making steady progress on that. One of the things that has resulted is there have been far fewer power outages than you have experienced in the past. And that's largely due to grid's activity getting up real high and cutting down hanging branches. But that's why that 50,000 piece is in there. On the ambulance wages, that's $107,500. We're looking to implement a program immediately that typically would be in a budget, but because new growth came in where it came in, we want to get it started right away. We're looking to staff daytime an additional medic. And what that will do for that 10, is it, you're going to do with the 10-hour shift?
10 or 12, yeah.
Will give us about 70 hours of coverage during the busiest time of the day every week. And we're not going to hire a full-time permanent member that may be benefited. We're looking to fill this with per diems or people who are willing to basically be regular part-time employee of the town. It's an experiment the union has agreed to go along with to get that really difficult skill set to find, willing to work for us full-time, in on a part-time rotating schedule. Hopefully we'll have a dedicated core that will repeat and come back and fill those shifts on a regular basis. So we build the teamwork and the familiarity with working with each other. It's an important initiative. If you've been paying attention to ambulance receipts, you see that they have steadily climbed. And we are running more and more ALS calls as a mix of our total calls, and the total calls themselves are up. So that was an initiative we thought we could try to fund right now. There are some expense items that ran a little short because of some unexpected, unfortunate repairs to major pieces of equipment and some additional preventive maintenance. I don't want to go through every last itemization there. We are moving some money from highway wages over to fire and ambulance to reflect the staffing change there. And in the community development office, we're looking to move money that town meeting put into the personnel budget into the expense budget. So Mr. Zisk left town. We are replacing his services with that of an outside consultancy. So that changes the categorization of the funds, but not the amount. So new growth came in at
New growth is not certified yet.
not certified, but it doesn't matter.
Good try,
We're
good
talking
try.
about a warrant, and you're going to close the warrant tonight. So
Correct,
whether it's
yeah.
certified or not, 626, 661,
That is the estimate, is 626,221, yes.
which is a very high amount of new growth. Article 2, we're making a couple of changes to the existing capital budget. Not to belabor it, but the roof project was, for this municipal center, approved in two pieces. Approved for the main roof, and then approved for the elevator shaft
45
roof.
and 90.
And the way the architect has spec'd out the project, it should all be done as one. We should have one article, and we would be short based on their architect's estimate. Now, that doesn't mean the bids will come in at that estimate or even higher than it, but we should, before we go out to bid, have ample funds to at least pay the architect's estimate, because that is the responsible thing to do when putting a major project out to bid. So that we needed to combine the projects, increase the total funding. Then we're looking to get a brush cutting head for the sidewalk tractor. The sidewalk tractor is an existing project. We'll be taking delivery on that item. It's been procured already in the middle of the winter. And there's an opportunity to increase its capability and address a town need. We currently have an outside vendor that does all the brush cutting on the side of the road. Sometimes the tractor breaks down. You know, he's getting up there in years. You know, it's been
And
a
we
little
have-
bit less reliable, and we really do need an in-house.
We have them for limited time, too. I think it's like,
Only a couple weeks a year.
3 weeks, yeah.
3 weeks a
3 weeks,
year,
yeah.
so it's not enough. So that's really what all this plumbing is about. The last item I will highlight is Douglas Public School personnel and expenses. During the budget process, very late in the process, the school administration came in and felt they were short some $330,000 or a little bit more than $330,000 because of some misunderstanding over prior appropriations of free cash, which was one-time money, to their budget. After a review of how they got to the situation they're in, we felt that we would meet them more than halfway and provide $187,247 to reflect the town's commitment to help them improve their services and address some of their service needs in the current fiscal year. During my report, I'll get to what we're looking at for next year in the budget process. But for now, this was to assist them with their shortfall. To date, they closed their budget by appropriating or earmarking funds from their reserve funds to make up for that shortfall. So this is basically not in an accounting way, but operationally thinking about it this way, you're basically helping them replenish their reserves, the money that they already earmarked to spend out. Are there any questions about Article 1 or Article 2? I know that Gene's looking to close out some dead projects here that have already been completed to reduce the amount of free cash that would go into the capital items. Article 3 is a transfer from free cash to the stabilization account. I don't even know what a number is yet. Gene's probably does know, but is going to keep it a secret from me. But I know enough about what goes on in town to know that this was a pretty decent year for what we're probably going to be adding to free cash. There were a number of significant events, not the least of which was the building permit for the warehouse. That was not a budgeted revenue, so it will close to free cash, and that's a substantial sum of money. And there were some other positive developments. This particular $227,367 and somewhat cents is replenishing our free cash for an expenditure we made several years ago when we joined the Massachusetts Strategic Health Group. We had to front load the health group's operating account so that we could pay claims beginning immediately before the first month's working rate was collected. And we transferred at town meeting $227,367 from free cash. Our balance, our surplus in the trust fund is sufficient where we were able to get that money back. So it closed to free cash. And we're just looking to take that exact amount and put it back from free cash now into stabilization. Because our stabilization account is just a little bit shy of your policy threshold of 5%. Okay? A little bit garbled there at the end, but we got the free cash back. We're going to move it to stabilization. It all counts as reserves when we go into bond rating process, which we anticipate doing in the next year or so. The dive rescue team, they're looking for $10,000. That's a receipts reserved for appropriation. What is the source?
Waterways receipts reserved appropriation, so we,
But how does the money
half
get into
of
that?
the boat vessel.
Boat vessel.
Excise
Excise.
gets transferred into there, as well as the vessel penalties. So that gets transferred at part of the year end. It gets added to the receipts reserved for appropriation account until, it usually gets around 10,000, and then we transfer it so they have it for operation.
Any questions there? The comm chart on Article 5, we just have some labeling. Just trying to keep it all super clean. Article 6, bylaw language regarding the senior tax work-off program. Currently, we set that as a dollar amount. We would like to change that into an hours.
Actually, this has already been approved at town meeting. This is just getting the bylaw to match our current practice. So many years ago, town meeting set it to 125 hours because minimum wage was increasing. It used to be a dollar threshold, but the bylaw piece never got changed. So this is really a housekeeping item to match what we're currently doing.
Again, spoken like a true accountant, I would say it was illegal, and now we're making it legal. It's the bylaw didn't reflect the policy. The bylaw trumps the policy. So we're going to fix the bylaw.
Yeah.
Should have done it first time. Article 7 is to ratify the dispatcher's contract, which you have in your packet. I can pause here. Are there any questions about what is in that contract? Article 8. Now, I can let Matt speak to it, or I can go over real quick. Article 8 really reflects the Attorney General's feedback to the town of Douglas after the solar bylaw was passed by town meeting and sent to the Attorney General for approval. There were some suggestions that came back to clarify language that protect the town's interest. Is that basically it in a nutshell?
Yes, and then it was reviewed by town council, and comments were forward.
Article 9 is the no solicitation general bylaw. Article 10, there are funds requested by the Water Sewer Department for water main updates, engineering and design for the Depot Street project. This is an ARPA-funded project, but the engineering piece will come from retained earnings at the Water Sewer Department. Any questions there?
Nope.
We need to let that contract out within the next 10 to 12 months. Then there are 2 citizens petitions. I'm looking at some of the labeling here, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, this knows.
I get it. The citizens petitions had sufficient signatures to be placed on the warrant. One is a bylaw amendment in Article 5, Section 5 regarding scenic roads. And then some of the labeling here, this should be Article 12.
Yes, I just noticed that.
Article 12 is also a citizen's petition, the crux of which is to limit the number of building permits to 5 for common owner. Current limit is 15. Now, Mr. Piccirillo is here. He did the work behind these 2 citizens petitions, so I will not comment on them, but if he wants to, if you want to ask questions, or you can have a seat up here, Mr. Piccirillo, if you could.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The opportunity to speak. That's probably your first opportunity to read or see the language that's contained in these 2 proposed articles.
Came in at the last minute. I'm just curious, what prompted this?
That's a good question. Just maybe I should do the formality. My name is Justin Piccirillo. I am a resident of Attleboro, but a taxpayer and property owner here in Douglas. I'm here to facilitate these 2 articles on behalf of citizens in town. So anyway, just my introduction, but the impetus for these 2 articles is to try to preserve the character of the town as best as possible. The first article relative to scenic roads is to try to preserve the look and appearance of those roads that have been designated by the town in the past as having certain characteristics that are important for the character of the town. So that article is intended to preserve, again, those characteristics. The second article about building permits was spurred by some discussion about rather large for the town projects that have been talked about, not necessarily materialized, but the idea behind these articles the article on the building permits is to try to moderate the growth of residential development in the town.
Any particular reason why you want to go through the traditional path of going to the planning board and public hearings and all that other thing instead of?
Yeah, good question. So I think the feeling among the supporters of this article is that the current framework of bylaws and state laws are perhaps too permissive in terms of the ability of developers to use up open space and to, again, change the character of the town in a way that is concerning to those residents.
Question, Matt. If these bylaw, the building permitting bylaw limiting to 5, if a developer came in and wished to supersede our procedures and say it was going to be a 40B development, would this do anything to stop them?
I don't think so. The
It would
40B
slow them
process-
down, that's about it.
40B process is privileged
Yep.
in many ways.
Be
and they
exempt from an
sidestep
awful
all
lot of stuff.
local rights.
Wouldn't something like this, and just asking the question, if we put a limitation on how many building permits you do, wouldn't that then kind of force them to go towards 40B? If they had a 30-house development they wanted to do, we limit them to 5?
You're asking me a hypothetical question.
Yeah. Well, you're a builder, Mike.
Well, it depends. If we're talking about anything in particular, then you could force somebody's hand in which direction they want to go. I just think that if it's just a general concern, then it should go through the typical process of going to the planning board and actually passing out the whole process instead of going to town meeting and then getting a decision. I think it'll be a hard sell to try to get a decision on something like that because it's not properly prepared. It's very similar to somebody else that sat before us earlier this evening. If you don't have all your plans in place, how do you convince somebody if you're not convinced yourself? So,
Well, sorry if I give the intonation that I'm not prepared or that I'm not prepared to talk about the subject, but I try to be respectful of, parties here and potential parties that might be concerned with such a bylaw. So I'm trying to tread carefully in that regard. The intent behind the article is to try to preserve the character of the town. It's not to stop anybody from coming here to do business. You can still pull a permit, you can still build houses. It just is a limitation on the quantity and the speed at which one might do that. So.
Just a quick point or a question. Garnered the necessary signatures, right? So this train's moving, no?
Yeah, so the purpose of this discussion is to reveal to the public or discuss in public what is on the warrant. These articles are on the warrant. So really, the only question now is whether or not you're going to close the warrant tonight or leave it open.
yeah, it's just getting some information out on the table and nothing more, nothing less than that. Not making any decision on it other than deciding to close the warrant because we don't even have a choice of whether or not this is on the warrant. It's on there because it's a citizen's petition, so that part of it's closed. As in earlier conversations, just expressing comments, that's all.
Yeah.
I'm just surprised that it came in at the last minute. So well, I guess we'll talk about it at town meeting. It really doesn't matter to talk too much into it, and I don't even want to dive into it because I got a lot of thoughts that are running through my head. So I myself appreciate your update as general thoughts of what you're proposing.
Mr. Fitzpatrick, if I might just address the timing piece. I believe the warrant was only opened a couple of weeks ago. So in that 2-week period, that's when those signatures were collected. So a lot of conversations were had with a lot of residents in town. To your point, I think this question in particular will be a controversial one. I think that there are folks that may find that language is favorable and folks that will find it disagreeable. And I think the town meeting should be a good arbiter of which direction the town should go, in my opinion.
Ultimately, it's up to them, right?
We'll find out.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
So is that all we have on the warrant?
That's it.
So if we don't have anything else, I'd like to make a motion to close the town warrant, special town meeting warrant.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Gene.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gene.
All right. We are going to review the police, fire, EMS, public safety, communications contract, and possible votes. I'm assuming there's been no changes since the last time we reviewed this contract?
No, when you have a fiscal impact statement from the chief of police, just to put a couple of markers in the sand for anyone who's watching at home, this group newly organized as a bargaining unit. This is their first ever contract. It is in many ways based upon past practice where past police chiefs and past convention was to extend many of the benefits of the police officers' contract to dispatchers, even though they weren't sworn officers. And the reasoning there was very sound because the dispatch function was used to recruit people who were eventually going to be trained to become police officers. So we were bringing them into the routines of work and the benefit time and the other
Just bringing them into
touch
the
points,
fold.
bringing them into the fold and getting them into a rhythm of working with the department. Now that that road has largely been closed off because of police officer standards and training and some of the police reform bills that have come through, we really are not going to have part-time officers anymore. And we really just have to send everybody through the academy to become a full-time officer. This is now a civilian profession. There are a number of certifications that people get. And on top of it all, our overall wage system for these employees was antiquated and very, very far behind other communities. So a lot of what is reflected here are past practices that look very familiar because they come out of the police contract, and salary adjustments that are 20% or 25% higher than the base rate from over a year ago. So we took some steps to soften this blow. So town meeting in May approved a 6% COLA for these employees. When this contract becomes retro to July 1st, by virtue of its approval, some of the money that was needed to make up that difference, it was already there because the 6% COLA was put in the budget. The rest, the $34,000, that'd be required to bring the police department's compensation budget to balance with this contract, is one of the things that was in Article 1 for the fall town meeting. Just one other quick note, because when it was discussed, I can imagine someone at home thinking something. We have a long-standing and very good relationship with Labor Council, and we have worked out a working arrangement where, because I have a lot of experience with labor contracts and labor negotiations, we talk about terms with the union. We agree to terms. We have a tentative agreement. We take a shot at drafting up the language, but it is always vetted by Labor Council, at least once, but usually twice. And if there's any issue where the drafting is just above, the typical skill set, then it goes straight to our Labor Council. But We don't draft these in a vacuum. We use existing language from our existing contracts. And in this particular case, because it was the first time through, Brian was pretty heavily involved. I don't typically ask Attorney Mazur to sit in on negotiating sessions because his rate is quite high. And if you were here for 15 hours, you would know it. Well, we've been turning back money every year from the legal budget. That would take all that money away, and then we'd be short.
So we'd see an adjustment at town meeting
We're
for...
trying to leverage Mr. Mazur's time accordingly.
Okay.
Any questions about the content of the contract?
Is there any action you need from us tonight on it?
I think it would say something to town meeting. Town meeting must ratify this contract, but if you were in support of it as a board, I think that's something we would want to be able to say to finance when we bring this to them.
Yeah. Anybody on the board not in support of the contract? So we can have the record reflect that no member of the board has any objections regarding the contract, so we would be considered in support of it. Does that work, Matt?
Sure.
Okay, so we are going to review the fire chief contract and possible votes. And we have the fire chief sitting back there, anxiously waiting to come up and hang out with us, I think.
Sure.
It's the high point of your day, right, John?
So a few words by introduction. With the retirement of the former chief, we had to move quickly to make sure that we had command staff in place. And my personal view of this is that there should not be ranks given if they're not respected. The number 2 person in the fire department is Chief Furno, who's our deputy chief, has many, many years of deep commitment to the fire service and deep commitment to the town as your highway superintendent. There was absolutely no reason whatsoever in my mind not to immediately ask John to step up and help us out, which he reluctantly agreed to do. I think John really loves being highway superintendent and likes working with the guys and being outside all the time and pace of work. And it was a sacrifice to put on a different hat and come over and be chief. But it was also something the town really needed and asked him to do. And he agreed to do it. Now, the contract is really the old chief's contract because we try to make these agreements so that they last for a long time. They contain terms that the town will accept. But we made some alterations to reflect the change that we've made. One of them was, as a result of comp reform, John was going to get a raise that was deserved 10 years ago, but the comp tables didn't allow for. And we also researched giving him a contract as highway superintendent, but that is not allowed either under Mass General Law. So we were kind of stuck. When we did comp reform, his experience and his time in the seat was going to give him a fairly substantial raise. And we've been looking to move the fire chief's salary to be more and more competitive over time anyway. So my promise to John and his acceptance of the job was that we would hold him harmless, that he would not lose income as a result of coming over from one department to the other. And so that is why the salary is set at the rate it is set at. And then there's a further adjustment because we wanted to address the fact that we don't want to lose a softball coach because we got a fire chief. And I enjoy going to the games where John is coach because I think he does a great job with the kids, and that's another lifelong commitment. What John has agreed to do is waive his coach's stipend in order to be full-time fire chief and not have any conflict or ethical considerations. So in that waiver, I also improved the salary by the amount that he was waiving, again, to hold the chief harmless. The last piece here is that he has the option to strike, to go back he has the ability to strike the option to return to the highway department within a year's time. After that, you turn into a pumpkin and everything's red, not orange. But I think that was a safety valve that the chief was, I think, deserved that opportunity to have the chance to go back. But once he decides to stay the remainder of the contract, it's a 1-year contract, but it would turn to a 3-year contract if he would strike that, not strike the option for that highway.
First thing, before anything, John, anytime we've ever asked Mr. Furno to step up and do something for the town, he's always been willing to just step forward and do whatever it is that we need of him, and I genuinely, appreciate the dedication that you have to the community, as well as to the board, because, we throw curveballs at you all the time, and you just seem to step up and hit them out of the park, so it's appreciated, John.
Thank you. I just want to thank Matt for working with me. I know, we worked hard back and forth on this contract. I will miss being highway super, because, almost my whole life I've worked over there. Great group of people there, but I'm excited for the new challenge as well. Awesome people at the fire station as well to work with. We got creative in the contract, and here we are today. So I appreciate you folks having the faith in me to run this department, and I'm looking forward to bringing it up to the next phase.
If it's any saving grace, you left the department in good hands.
Yeah.
Absolutely did, yes.
And as for the faith of it, John, we could ask you to go run the cafeteria at the schools, and we'd have faith that you'd get it done probably better than most, so.
Thank you.
I could make a joke about Bisquick and pancakes, but I'm not allowed.
Go ahead.
So is there any action required from us, or is this more of an
I
update?
would ask that you do, because under the act, if you don't disapprove within 21
Yeah.
days, the appointment takes effect. You also have the option to approve the appointment. I'm actually asking you to do two things, to approve the appointment and approve the contract.
Yeah.
It is not a typical transition, right? We have very few department head turnovers, and it's a nice way to start your gig as a department head, to have the select board's approval on the record rather than let it pocket approval, so to speak.
Well, I would entertain a motion to approve the appointment and contract for the new fire chief.
I would like to make the motion to approve the appointment and also approve the contract for John Furno as fire chief.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on this? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thanks for your work on that, Matt.
And John, again, thank you very much for everything.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, we have meeting minutes and possible votes.
Totally random.
So we're going to pass over minutes because there's none in our packet. So we need to approve the MSHG agreement for joint negotiation and purchase of certain insurance coverages and authorize TA to sign said agreement, and possible votes.
Mr. Chairman, we are now in the 5th year of being a member of this group. And when the group was formed with only 3 municipal entities, we were moving very quickly because we had to lock in and establish how we were going to provide the benefit to our employees. And we took a joint purchasing agreement off the shelf, using an attorney who works with many joint purchasing groups around the Commonwealth. And the agreement that we signed and was originally approved by the Douglas Select Board at the time didn't necessarily absolutely reflect what we were actually doing. There were some nuances to the group that made it quite different from a traditional joint purchasing group. Not to belabor the topic, but typically when you have 8, 9, 10 communities come together they will form a single plan, and they will be rated as a group, and they pay their money, and everybody pays the same premium for the same coverage. They could be fully insured, or they could be self-insured, but the point is they have all come together and they are sharing risk across the entire risk profile. So from $0 of claims all the way up to the top. They may get stop-loss insurance, they may do some other things, but it is one single plan. And so if the group decides it wants to change something in the plan, everybody in the group has to go back and negotiate that, at least impact bargain that with their unions. And if the fund runs a surplus, everyone shares in the surplus in proportion to the amount of premium that they contribute. But if there's a rate reduction, it has the same effect on everyone within the group. And that's the traditional approach. And we hadn't ruled that out when we started this, but we ruled it out very quickly. Our group is very different, and we do not use services-only contracts or fully insured premium carriers. We are using a third-party administrator, and we are self-insured. And each group in the Massachusetts Strategic Health Group is individually rated on its own experience. And we design our own plans. So when we went to the bargaining units here in Douglas, we said, we're going to have all the same doctors, all the same coverages, all the same out-of-pocket copays, nothing is going to change, except your network's going to be huge, because now you're not getting the Harvard Pilgrim network, now you're Harvard Pilgrim in Massachusetts, but no matter where you go in the country, you're going to be in the United Network, the largest network in the country. We've been able to negotiate a number of things like that that greatly enhance the value of the benefit to employees. And at the same time, because we're not paying the overhead to the insurance carriers, we're really doing well financially. In the financial report that I sent around, I presented to Finance last Tuesday, and I sent around to you that same night. You may want to focus on those two slides that talk about the history of the group and what it's turned back to the town. Tonight, you talked about $227,000 equity buy-in coming back to the town, being possibly, if the voters approve, go into stabilization. There's another almost $2 million in surplus from our experience, because we have been able to cut out all the overhead and cut out all the expenses. And frankly, the group that we cover now is different. It is healthier than it was 2 years ago. So we're running substantial surpluses. The new joint purchasing agreement locks in the mechanism for every single member in the group to be able to take their surplus out without altering the economics, the float that is required to be left in the trust fund to cover claims on a rolling basis. So the way the agreement reads, I'm going to just hit the highlights. We must leave between 8 and 12% of our annual claims in the trust fund. That is what keeps us. So if we start to run hot, if we have a bunch of people that get very sick, we will still be using Douglas money to pay Douglas claims. We won't be relying upon the group to backstop us. The way the group is constructed is if you run a deficit for too long of a period of time, you need a rate adjustment. And the rate adjustment will be voted by the board to come back. So we're on our own until stop loss. The way stop loss works is the more numbers you have, the better. So we take all of our 15 member communities, we are now up to 15. We have 14 voting members, but 15 total represented. And we pool for stop loss, and that we're so large now that we are considered a national account. So national carriers bid on our business. So we go out for annual renewals. We get many, many bids. We get lots of discussions. And we have enough bargaining power to get rate caps and other benefits thrown into our stop loss, which include critical care, second opinion, a whole bunch of things called pinnacle care that many of our folks who have had big claims have been able to take advantage of. In terms of sort of a standard organization of the board and the way it creates subcommittees, the way the rates are calculated, we have a professional underwriter. The board appoints an auditor, so our books are audited every single year according to Massachusetts Chapter 32B. And there is a whole, several sections here of what happens if you decide to leave the group or if the group were to dissolve. And those are all the things that an organizational document have to take into consideration. This group has worked out very well for the town. If you are familiar with my drafting style, you know that I wrote most of this. Mostly as chairman, and then now as just a standing member of the committee. But I worked very hard on this. We had several different groups of attorneys that reviewed it before the board voted it. We need to vote this tonight so that we can all sign it. And I really need the board, if you approve it tonight, to sign it so that I can go to the next board meeting as a qualified
Yeah, it's
delegate.
in the red folder.
So there's actually 2 votes. I'm asking you to approve this, and then at the same time, appoint the town administrator to represent the town as a board member. And we've been using Jean as my alternate. So if I'm not able to attend, we still have a vote that Jean can go.
Did you step down as board, or were you term limited, or?
I really don't understand. I like to keep things friendly. I'll just say, maybe it was somebody else's turn. You know, this is one of the things that I'm extremely proud of in my entire career. So I don't intend to be a shrinking violet on this board, and perfectly intend to maybe be chair again real soon, but if somebody else wanted a shot, so.
Anybody care to make a motion?
I'd make a motion that we approve the agreement as is presented in regards to the purchase of certain insurance coverages through the MSHG, and that to authorize the town administrator to sign the agreement on behalf of this board and the lives covered under the plan. I needed a noun. That's-
He started thinking, where am I going with this?
It's going somewhere. Everybody want to second that
I'll
one?
second that one.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
All right,
Aye.
All right, so the next is to designate a Douglas representative and alternate to the MSHG board and possible votes, to which we've already got our regular member.
I make a motion to appoint Jean as our alternate.
Second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Brings us to your report, Mr. Administrator.
There's going to be a lot of paving starting.
A lot.
So I almost want to avoid committing to what specific day and what specifically will be done that day, because I can guarantee you that as soon as the words come out of my mouth, someone will change their plan. But let me just say this. There was a meeting held today, there will be another meeting held tomorrow. Just to remind everyone, we have a water contract and a sewer contract. Portion of the paving is going to be done under the sewer installation contract. Another portion of the paving is going to be done under the water contract. Both contractors are likely to be working at the same time on North and Gilboa Streets in Northeast Maine. We're doing everything we can to work with those paving contractors to work out a schedule so that disturbance to the public will be minimized. You just have to remember a couple of things. We may not direct the means and methods by which a contractor completes the work under the contract. We are not allowed to do that. So we can do the best we can to urge people to work within certain hours and to do things a certain way. But at the end of the day, they're going to do what they need to do to finish their obligations under the contract. Gilboa Street is wide, and Lackey Dam Road, when it turns into Lackey Dam Road, that's a wide road. It will take the milling machine 4 passes, and the paving machine 4 passes, back and forth. So that's going to be a complicated, sort of labor-intensive amount of work. It's going to occur mostly on a weekend, we believe, and there will be night work within the area of Route 146 to minimize disturbance to highway traffic. There will be limitations placed on truck traffic on the brand-new pavement. We're especially concerned about heavy trucks not turning on brand-new pavement and tearing it to shreds. We've done everything humanly possible to work with the utility contractors to prevent there being any need whatsoever to open the road up. And again, really, within the next 5 years. We want this thing left alone and for the public to be able to enjoy a brand-new road. Gilboa and Lackey Dam, it's a long distance, but it's pretty straightforward work. North Street is not. North Street is a mess. Underneath all that pavement, there are all kinds of pipes, all kinds of manholes, stuff that got buried that we only find when we have a leak. And then, of course, there's been so much pavement laid down that we need to really grind it way down, reset the granite curbs, and then work on the sidewalks at the same time. All of this before snow flies. I'm hedging my bets. I think North Street's going to be a lot of work. I think it's really going to require some patience on people's part. At least, though, it's a short run, and there are detours available that will minimize, the problems there. Emergency vehicles, school buses, local traffic will all be accommodated, but through traffic is going to have to take the detour. That's one project. We're starting this week. You will see some trees being cut and some work being done on South Street. South Street is this year's paving project. I wish we could, pave 20 miles at a time, but we can't. And one of the reasons why is because there needs to be adequate drainage. Stormwater that collects on roadways that have become cupped over time, cracks the pavement, then ice and thaw, it starts to almost work like a jackhammer. See the alligator cracks, the road disintegrates. South Street is in a pretty big mess. We're going to be dealing with basically from Arch Street down to Hemlock. We are going to be reinstalling and fixing our existing stormwater pipes and then restoring the road to have a proper crown and then paving it. So that work could continue for several weeks, but we think traffic will be minimally changed there because the roadway is wide enough, and once the paving gets started, it's going to have a pretty good pace to it. Amarillo won that contract. They are a really dedicated, purely a pavement contractor. They're not out there to lay a whole lot of pipe. They're really just going to work on the roadway, so once they get started, weather permitting, which is key, but it's just another major roadway in town that will be worked on at the same time as downtown. It's one of those things. Be careful what you ask for. By the end of this, there'll be 4 or 5 new miles of roadway in town, and that's what people wanted. And most of it, almost all of it, is being done at the expense of the Commonwealth and the federal government from grant funds, not from taxpayer funds. So that's your update on paving.
Yeah, the only thing the town and taxpayers are paying for is South Street, correct?
Half of South Street, right? So the other half is Chapter 90.
Yeah.
There are encouraging things coming up on roadway pavements because the new budget this year includes specific set-asides for roadway improvement projects in rural communities under 10,000. So we're going to do our level best to grab some of that 25 million that has been put out there.
We finally benefit from being a small town.
Yeah.
About time. Right.
I would be remiss if I didn't point out that, it's unfortunate sometime that the state government takes so long to pass its budgets and for the governor to sign them. Because Senator Fatman got us 30 grand for a senior bus. By the time the budget was approved and the money was available to the town, we already bought the bus with town money. we're working with the state right now. We're looking to close that 30,000 to free cash. And, depending on what deal the state wants to push on us, I'm sure Patrice can find a way over time to make good use of it for senior transportation. But many thanks to Senator Fatman for putting that in. And on the other side, on the House side, Rep. McKenna had gotten us money for the design of the HVAC project at the fire station. That project is ongoing, so we will use that grant money. Basically, it's an earmark from the budget to offset the cost of the design work for HVAC at the fire station. Okay. The rest of my update I'll just leave to the deck that I circulated. It's a very important document because it summarizes the financial condition of the town of Douglas and begins to talk about the budget process for the next 5 years. Really, the run from the override is over. The run from the warehouse project and the economic development around it is just beginning. It's helpful for people to look at the significant improvements to the financial condition of the town, at the same time remain sober, because just because things are going well doesn't mean that you are flush. You are not flush. You still have to live within a substantial budget constraint, which is that you are still predominantly residential and growing fairly rapidly for a Massachusetts community, but relatively slowly in terms of monetary terms. Part of that's because you're so locked into this dependence on Chapter 70 from the state that you don't see the full impact of your annual increases in the levy, because almost half of what you're supplying to your schools is still state aid that stays flat every year. So, if taxes go up 2.5% to the schools, that's a 1.25% increase. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But whereas in the past we would talk about COLAs and increases to school budgets of 1.25 or 1.5%, we have been running at 1.5% to the Douglas Public Schools year over year for several years. We went up to 2 because of work we did with the teachers union to finalize their contract. The notion of boosting that to 5, 6, or 7% is just not tenable. And that's what the 5-year budget model will show you if you go through my deck. But can we talk about 2s as a consistent pattern for COLAs and for increases to education? Yes. Can we talk about trying to minimize the pace of increase in the other aspects of the educational budget? BVT, school buses, Norfolk Aggie, all the things that get loaded into the educational budget. If they don't live up to the assumed rate of growth, would that money go over to DPS? Well, yes, because the budget model doesn't really matter exactly which part of the educational budget gets which dollar. It only matters that there's an overall growth rate assigned. And the overall growth rate assigned to the school bus contract is 5%. To BVT, it's 4.5%. So you can see if those growth rates don't materialize and there's extra money in the educational side, it should go to DPS. I don't disagree with that. But, we're doing a lot of aspirational budget discussions, and you can see what I've built into the model by looking through that deck. The last thing that I will talk about is I have circulated today to all the department heads a list of goals. Now that the compensation system allows for some upward growth for merit, we need to go back to good old-fashioned performance evaluations and make sure that we do not fall into the trap that many municipal management teams run into. Some of you are familiar with the example I'm about to use. You give somebody 4 or 5 key goals, and you say, you got to accomplish this stuff. And they knock it out of the park. They hit grand slam. They do everything that you want to do. And then they completely neglect the basic blocking and tackling of their job, right? And then they wonder why they get a negative review. The way I want to set this up with the department heads is we establish what it is, the service level expectations for their performance. Nothing will happen for them in a good way unless they hit that. And those things are explicitly laid out as bullet points under each department. And then if we identify special projects that are basically extra credit, that's how you might accelerate your path on the compensation table. But you cannot fail the exam and answer all the extra credit questions and then pass as a result of that. It doesn't work that way. And that's a tough lesson for people to learn, because they a lot of times those aspirational goals that a select board will assign it's the fun stuff. It's stuff we want to come to work every day, and because you can look at taxpayers and say, look how much progress we're making. And at the same time, if they never see your face, if they don't get, the basic things that they expect, the permits aren't turned around in a quick way, doors are closed when they should be open, if those things aren't being tended to, then overall satisfaction isn't very high. So that's the last thing. And then I think I would be remiss if I didn't at least say it. I, for one, am heartbroken that Timmy Wakefield passed away, and it's just a horrible thing. And like a lot of people who really love a sport, I'm really taking life lessons, not just because he was a good, pretty decent pitcher or whatever. The lesson that Tim Wakefield's example provided for Red Sox fans was, here's a guy who completely reinvented himself. He was a professional first baseman, but he wasn't really going to make a splash over there at first base. He just wasn't. I don't think he was a particularly good hitter. And if you're a first baseman and you don't hit for power, your time in the majors is going to be kind of slow. It may never materialize. The guy taught himself how to throw an impossible pitch. If you ever tried to throw a knuckleball, it's really not very easy. And he worked at it, and he got to be really good at it, and he persisted. And because he persisted, he was able to reinvent his whole career. And people forget about this, but a real test of character is how somebody behaves after they've had a terrible setback. Wakefield served up a pitch to a New York Yankees hitter in the championship series that cost the Red Sox the game. He came back a couple seasons later and was absolutely brilliant against the same Yankees in the same series. And we went to the World Series and broke the curse that year. And it's just, he was so generous with his time to the community and the Jimmy Fund and the city of Boston and all those people that it's a really, really sad thing that he passed away so young. And it's a loss to the whole community in New England. And try to take inspiration from people, and when you lose them, it stinks. So, thank you for indulging me with that.
Okay, any open session topics not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance of the meeting? Seeing as none. Or do you have one?
Just a quick regrind. There's going to be a lot of it.
Yes.
Do we have a plan for what we're doing with
The
that?
plan is to take it.
Take it.
Put it in your backyard.
So, no, you don't want that. A little bit dusty. It's going to be perfect for the new access road from Davis Street to the rear of the high school, and we will save it for other purposes. We'll use it right away, though. We're not going to let it sit around and get hard and useless. But it's going to be pretty good material. There's a lot of pavement there.
And we have the capability to move it and store it? Great.
Good question.
So, I would say Soldiers Field parking lot, if we needed a place, that would be even Martin Road. Those are two open spaces that could use it. That's great. Good report.
Awesome. So Tim, looking at you for a motion, buddy.
All right, I would make a motion that we move into executive session for purposes of talking about Chapter 61 parcels on Orange Street, and then to leave executive session for the purpose of adjournment.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Morris, aye.
All right.
Smith, aye.